He that is unjust is also impious. For the nature of the universe, having made all reasonable creatures one for another, to the end that they should do one another good, more or less according to the several persons and occasions, but in no wise hurt one another, it is manifest that he that doth transgress against this her will is guilty of impiety towards the most ancient and venerable of all the deities. For the nature of the universe is the nature the common parent of all, and therefore piously to be observed of all things that are, and that which now is, to whatsoever first was, and gave it its being, hath relation of blood and kindred. She is also called truth, and is the first cause of all truths. He therefore that willingly and wittingly doth lie is impious in that he doth receive, and so commit injustice. But he that against his will, in that he disagreeth from the nature of the universe, and in that striving with the nature of the world he doth in his particular violate the general order of the world. For he doth no better than strive and war against it, contrary to his own nature, applieth himself to that which is contrary to truth. For nature had before furnished him with instincts and opportunities sufficient for the attainment of it, which he, having hitherto neglected, is not now able to discern that which is false from that which is true. He also that pursues after pleasures as that which is truly good, and flies from pains as that which is truly evil, is impious. For such a one must of necessity oftentimes accuse that common nature, as distributing many things both unto the evil and unto the good, not according to the deserts of either, as unto the bad oftentimes pleasures, and the causes of pleasures, so unto the good, pains, and the occasions of pains. Again, he that feareth pains and crosses in this world, feareth some of those things which some time or other must needs happen in the world, and that we have already showed to be impious. And he that pursueth after pleasures will not spare to compass his desires, to do that which is unjust, and that is manifestly impious. Now those things which unto nature are equally indifferent, for she had not created both pain and pleasure, if both had not been unto her equally indifferent. They that will live according to nature must in those things, as being of the same mind and disposition that she is, be as equally indifferent. Whosoever therefore in either matter of pleasure and pain, death and life, honor and dishonor, which things nature in the administration of the world indifferently doth make use of, is not as indifferent it is apparent that he is impious. When I say that common nature doth indifferently make use of them, my meaning is that they happen indifferently in the ordinary course of things, which, by a necessary consequence, whether as principal or accessory, come to pass in the world, according to that first and ancient deliberation of Providence, by which she, from some certain beginning, did resolve upon the creation of such a world, conceiving, then in her womb, as it were, some certain rational generative seeds and faculties of things future, whether subjects, changes, successions, both such and just so many. It were indeed more happy and comfortable for a man to depart out of this world, having lived all his life long clear from all falsehood, dissimulation, voluptuousness, and pride. But if this cannot be, yet it is some comfort for a man joyfully to depart as weary and out of love with those paretico, rather than to desire to live and to continue long in those wicked courses. For a far greater plague is the corruption of the mind than any certain change and distemper of the common air can be. This is a plague of creatures, as they are living creatures, but that of men, as they are men or reasonable. Thou must not in matter of death carry thyself scornfully, but as one that is well pleased with it, as being one of those things that nature hath appointed. For what thou dost conceive of these, of a boy to become a young man, to wax old, to grow, to ripen, to get teeth, or a beard, or gray hairs to beget, to bear, or to be delivered, or what other actions soever it be, that is natural unto man according to the several seasons of his life, such a thing is it also to be dissolved. It is therefore the part of a wise man, in matter of death, not in any wise to carry himself, either violently or proudly, but patiently to wait for it, as one of nature's operations, that with the same mind as now thou dost expect, when that which yet is but an embryo in thy wife's belly shall come forth, thou mayst expect also when thy soul shall fall off from that outward coat or skin, wherein as a child in the belly it lieth, involved and shut up. But thou desirest a more popular, and though not so direct and philosophical, yet a very powerful and penetrative recipe against the fear of death. Nothing can make thee more willing to part with thy life than if thou shalt consider both what the subjects themselves are that thou shalt part with, and what manner of disposition thou shalt no more have to do with. True it is that offended with them thou must not be by no means, but take care of them, and meekly bear with them. However, this thou mayst remember, that whensoever it happens that thou depart, it shall not be from men that held the same opinions that thou dost, for that indeed, if it were so, is the only thing that might make thee averse from death, and willing to continue here, if it were thy hap to live with men that had obtained the same belief that thou hast. But now what a toil it is for thee to live with men of different opinions, thou seest, so that thou hast rather occasion to say, Hasten, I do pray, O death, lest I also in time forget myself. He that sinneth, sinneth unto himself. He that is unjust hurts himself, in that he makes himself worse than he was before. Not he only that committeth, but he also that omitteth something is oftentimes unjust. If my present apprehension of the object be right, and my present action charitable, and this, towards whatsoever doth proceed from God, be my present disposition, to be well pleased with it, it sufficeth. To wipe away fancy, to use deliberation, to quench concupiscence, to keep the mind free to herself, of all unreasonable creatures, there is but one unreasonable soul, and of all that are reasonable, but one reasonable soul, divided betwixt them all. As of all earthly things there is but one earth, and but one light that we see by, and but one air that we breathe in, as many as either breathe or see. Now whatsoever partakes of some common thing naturally affects and inclines unto that whereof it is part, being of one kind and nature with it. Whatsoever is earthly presseth downwards to the common earth. Whatsoever is liquid would flow together, and whatsoever is airy would be together likewise. So that, without some obstacle and some kind of violence, they cannot well be kept asunder. Whatsoever is fiery doth not only by reason of the elementary fire tend upwards, but here also is so ready to join and to burn together, that whatsoever doth want sufficient moisture to make resistance is easily set on fire. Whatsoever therefore is partaker of that reasonable common nature, naturally doth as much and more long after his own kind. For by how much in its own nature it excels all other things, by so much more is it desirous to be joined and united unto that which is of its own nature. As for unreasonable creatures then, they had not long been, but presently begun among them swarms and flocks, and broods of young ones, and a kind of mutual love and affection. For though but unreasonable, yet a kind of soul these had, and therefore was that natural desire of union more strong and intense in them, as in creatures of a more excellent nature than either in plants or stones or trees. But among reasonable creatures begin commonwealths, friendships, families, public meetings, and even in their wars, conventions, and truces. Now among them that were yet of a more excellent nature, as the stars and planets, though by their nature far distant one from another, yet even among them began some mutual correspondency and unity. So proper is it to excellency, in a high degree, to effect unity, as that even in things so far distant, it could operate unto a mutual sympathy. But now, behold, what is now come to pass? Those creatures that are reasonable are now the only creatures that have forgotten their natural affection and inclination of one towards another. Among them alone, of all other things that are of one kind, there is not to be found a general disposition to flow together. But though they fly from nature, yet are they stopped in their course, and apprehended. Do they what they can? Nature doth prevail. And so shalt thou confess, if thou dost observe it. For sooner mayst thou find a thing earthly, where no earthly thing is, than find a man that naturally can live by himself alone. Man, God, the world, everyone in their kind, bear some fruits. All things have their proper time to bear, though by custom the word itself is in a manner become proper unto the vine, and the like, yet is it so nevertheless, as we have said. As for reason, that beareth both common fruit for the use of others, and peculiar, which itself doth enjoy. Reason is of a diffusive nature. What itself doth enjoy, it begets in others, and so doth multiply. Either teach them better if it be in thy power, or if it be not, remember that for this use to bear with them patiently was mildness and goodness granted unto thee. The gods themselves are good unto such, yea, and in some things, as in matter of health, of wealth, of honor, are content often to further their endeavors, so good and gracious are they. And mightest thou not be so too? Or tell me, what doth hinder thee? Labor not as one to whom it is appointed to be wretched, nor as one that either would be pitied or admired, but let this be thine only care and desire, so always and in all things to prosecute or to forbear, as the law of charity or mutual society doth require. This day I did come out of all my trouble, nay, I have cast out all my trouble. It should rather be for that which troubled thee, whatsoever it was not without anywhere that thou shouldest come out of it, but within, in thine own opinions, from whence it must be cast out, before thou canst truly and constantly be at ease. All those things, for matter of experience, are usual and ordinary, for their continuance but for a day, and for their matter most base and filthy. As they were in the days of those whom we have buried, so are they now also, and no otherwise. The things themselves that affect us, they stand without doors, neither knowing anything themselves, nor able to utter anything unto others concerning themselves. What then is it that passeth verdict on them? The understanding, as virtue and wickedness consist not in passion but in action, so neither doth the true good or evil of a reasonable, charitable man consist in passion, but in operation and action. To the stone that is cast up, when it comes down, it is no hurt unto it, as neither benefit when it doth ascend. Sift their minds and understandings, and behold what men they be, whom thou dost stand in fear of what they shall judge of thee, what they themselves judge of themselves. Right? All things that are in the world are always in the estate of alteration. Thou also art in a perpetual change, yea, and under corruption too, in some part, and so is the whole world. It is not thine, but another man's sin. Why should it trouble thee? Let him look to it, whose sin it is. Of an operation and of a purpose there is an ending, or of an action, and of a purpose we say commonly, that it is at an end. From opinion also there is an absolute cessation, which is as it were the death of it. In all this there is no hurt. Apply this now to a man's age, as first a child, then a youth, then a young man, then an old man. Every change from one age to another is a kind of death. And all this while here no matter of grief. Pass now on to that life first, that which thou livest under thy grandfather, then under thy mother, then under thy father, and thus, when through the whole course of thy life hitherto, thou hast found and observed many alterations, many changes, many kinds of endings and cessations. Put this question to thyself, what matter of grief or sorrow dost thou find in any of these? Or what doest thou suffer through any of these? If in none of these, then neither in the ending and consummation of thy whole life, which is also but a cessation and change, as occasion shall require, either to thine own understanding, or to that of the universe, or to his, whom thou hast now to do with, let thy refuge be with all speed. To thine own, that it resolve upon nothing against justice, to that of the universe, that thou mayest remember part of whom thou art, of his, that thou mayst consider whether in the estate of ignorance or of knowledge. And then also must thou call to mind that he is thy kinsman, as thou thyself, whoever thou art, were made for the perfection and consummation, being a member of it, of a common society. So must every action of thine tend to the perfection and consummation of a life that is truly sociable. What action soever of thine, therefore, that either immediately or afar off hath not reference to the common good, that is an exorbitant and disorderly action. Yea, it is seditious. As one among the people who from such and such a consent in unity should factiously divide and separate himself. Children's anger, mere babels, wretched souls bearing up dead bodies, that they may not have their fall so soon, even as it is in that common dirge song.